Chapter 1. A Humble Beginning. Life in our small village was simple but full of challenges. My family wasn't wealthy, and we didn't have much in terms of material possessions. But what we lacked in wealth, we made up for with love and a strong sense of togetherness. My parents, David and Mary, were the backbone of our family. Dad worked as a carpenter, shaping pieces of wood into furniture that carried the stories of many homes. He was a quiet man, with calloused hands and a gentle heart. His work was steady, but money was often tight. Still, he approached life with patience, teaching us that hard work and honesty were more valuable than gold. Mom, on the other hand, was the energy in the house, a homemaker by title, but truly the heart of our home. She had a way of making everything feel special. Even on days when all we had for dinner was a simple stew, she'd arrange it beautifully, adding a sprig of herbs from the tiny garden by the window. "It's not what you have," she'd say, "but how you make the most of it." I was the eldest of 3 siblings. At 14, I felt a sense of responsibility for my younger brother, Sam, and our little sister, Anna. Sam was 11, full of energy and mischief. He had dreams of becoming an explorer, always running off to climb trees or wade through the creek at the edge of the village. Anna, our sunshine, was just 7. She was small for her age, with curly hair that framed her face like a halo. Her laugh was infectious, and no matter how tough things got, she always managed to lighten the mood. Our house was small, with 2 cramped bedrooms, creaky wooden floors, and a leaky roof that Dad promised to fix. One day, it wasn't much, but it was home. Every corner held memories. The worn-out couch where we gathered to share stories, the kitchen where Mom taught us how to cook, and the yard where Sam and I played endless games of tag. Life wasn't easy, but we were happy in our own way. Every morning, Dad would head to the carpenter's workshop, taking orders for tables, chairs, or whatever people in the village needed. Mom would start her day early, cooking breakfast while humming old songs. She always made sure we left for school with full stomachs and big smiles. School was a 30-minute walk from our house. Sam and I would hold Anna's hands as we walked the dusty road, laughing and chatting along the way. We didn't have fancy backpacks or shiny shoes, but we carried our books with pride. Education was important to our parents, and they reminded us every day that it was the key to a better future. One afternoon, after school, we found Dad sitting on the front porch, looking more tired than usual. His hands were wrapped in a cloth, and there was a deep crease on his forehead. "What happened, Dad?" I asked, running to his side. "Just a little accident at the workshop," he replied with a faint smile. Nothing to worry about, but I could see it wasn't just a little accident. His hands, his most valuable tools, were injured. For the next few weeks, he couldn't work. It was the first time I saw worry cloud my mother's face. With Dad unable to bring in money, things grew even tighter. Mom didn't complain, though. She found ways to make do. She started baking bread and selling it to the neighbors. It wasn't much, but it kept us going. "We're stronger than this," she'd say. "As long as we have each other, we'll be fine." Even Sam and I pitched in. After school, we'd help Mom with the baking. Sam loved kneading the dough, and Anna would decorate the loaves with little patterns. It became a family effort, and in some strange way, it brought us even closer. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, eating the bread we'd baked together, Dad said something that stayed with me forever. "You know," he began, looking at each of us, "life will throw challenges your way, but it's not the challenges that define you. It's how you face them, and when you face them together. As a family, there's nothing you can't overcome." Those words became our anchor. Through the tough weeks that followed, we held on to them. Slowly, Dad's hands healed, and he returned to the workshop. Things started to get better again, but the lessons we learned during that time stayed with us. We learned the value of teamwork, of sacrifice, and most importantly, of hope. And though we didn't realize it at the time, those humble beginnings were shaping us into the strong, united family we'd need to be for the challenges that lay ahead. That night, as we sat under the stars in our little yard, Sam asked, "Do you think we'll always stay like this? Together, I mean." "Yes," I said firmly, looking at him and Anna. "Because no matter where life takes us, we'll always have this, we'll always have each other." And with that, we went to bed, not knowing what the future held, but feeling ready to face it, as long as we were together. Chapter 2. Rising Above Challenges. The weeks that followed Dad's recovery brought a new sense of hope to our family. His hands had healed enough for him to return to the carpenter's workshop, and life slowly began to feel normal again. But little did we know, a storm was brewing. one that would test everything we had learned about resilience and unity. It began with the drought. Our village, nestled between hills and forests, relied heavily on the small creek that ran through it. The creek provided water for drinking, farming, and even for Mom's little herb garden. But that year, the rains didn't come as they usually did. Day after day, the sun beat down mercilessly, drying up the fields and shrinking the creek to a thin trickle. Everything will be fine, Mom reassured us as she rationed water for cooking and cleaning. But even she couldn't hide her worry. The drought affected everyone. Food prices soared, and many families in the village began to struggle, including ours. Dad's work slowed down as people had less money to spend on furniture. Mom's bread business also suffered. People could barely afford the basics, let alone extra loaves of bread. It felt like we were slowly sinking, and no matter how hard we tried, the ground beneath us kept giving way. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, eating a modest meal of rice and beans, Dad broke the silence. "We need to think of a way to get through this," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We've faced tough times before, and we'll do it again." "What can we do, Dad?" I asked, feeling the weight of his words. He looked at each of us, his eyes lingering on Mom. "We have to work together. Like we always do, we'll find a way." The next day, Dad began asking around the village for odd jobs. It didn't matter if it was repairing a fence, fixing a door, or even chopping firewood. He took whatever work he could find. Sam and I helped him after school, carrying tools and learning to repair things alongside him. It wasn't easy, but it gave us a sense of purpose. Mom's, meanwhile, started experimenting with new recipes. She found creative ways to use the limited ingredients we had, making soups, pastries, and even homemade jams from the wild berries. Sam and Anna collected. She'd wake up before sunrise to bake, and then set up a small stall in the village square. At first, sales were slow. People were hesitant to spend on anything that wasn't essential. But then something wonderful happened. One of Mom's regular customers, a kind woman named Mrs. Turner, tasted the jam and declared it the best she'd ever had. Word spread, and soon, Mom's stall became a little beacon of hope in the village. Despite the hardships, there were moments of joy and laughter. Sam, always the adventurous one, turned our struggles into a game. He'd challenge Anna and me to see who could collect the most berries or carry the heaviest bucket of water. His energy was infectious, reminding us that even in difficult times, there was room for play. But not every day was easy. There were nights when we went to bed with growling stomachs, or mornings when we woke up to find that another bill had arrived in the mail. On those days, it was hard to stay hopeful. One particularly tough evening, after a long day of work, I found Mom sitting alone in the kitchen. Her shoulders were slumped, and her hands were folded tightly in her lap. "Mom," I said softly, sitting beside her, "are you okay?" She gave me a small, tired smile. "I'm just thinking, sweetheart, thinking about how to make things better." "You're already doing so much," I said, taking her hand. "We all are. We'll get through this, won't we?" She looked at me with tears in her eyes, but nodded firmly. "Yes, we will, because we have each other. And as long as we have each other, there's nothing we can't overcome." Her words stayed with me, giving me strength on the hard days. As the weeks turned into months, the drought finally began to ease. The first rain came late one night, starting as a light drizzle, and then turning into a steady downpour. We all ran outside, laughing and dancing in the rain. Anna squealed with delight, her curls plastered to her face, while Sam tried to catch raindrops in his mouth. It felt like the sky itself was celebrating with us. The rain brought new life to the village. The creek began to fill, crops started to grow again, and people's spirits lifted. For us, it marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. But what stayed with me most was the lesson we had learned. Even in the darkest times, hope could shine through. And when you have a family that stands together, no challenge is too great. That night, as we sat around the dinner table, Dad raised his glass of water, a simple but precious thing, and said to us, to our family, "We've been through the storm, and we've come out stronger." We clinked our glasses together, smiling at one another. It wasn't the end of our struggles, but it was a reminder that no matter what life threw at us, we could rise above it. Together. Chapter 3, Dreams and Determination. As the days turned into weeks, life slowly started returning to normal. The creek flowed steadily again, the fields turned green, and the village began to hum with life. Yet our family was not content with merely surviving. Those difficult months had sparked something in each of us, a hunger for something greater. a desire to rise above our circumstances and chase dreams that once seemed impossible. It started with Sam. One day, as we sat under the old oak tree behind our house, he turned to me. His face lit up with excitement. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice brimming with determination. "I want to be a scientist." I laughed, not because I didn't believe him, but because Sam was always full of wild ideas. "A scientist? You mean like the people who invent things in big labs?" "Exactly," he exclaimed. "I want to study nature, figure out why some plants grow faster than others, or why the creek dried up during the drought. Maybe I can help people one day." His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself nodding. "If anyone can do it, it's you, Sam." That conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter for our family. Sam's dream ignited something in all of us. Dad began to dream of expanding his workshop, creating furniture that would be known far beyond our village. Mom, ever resourceful, talked about growing her small baking business into something bigger, maybe even opening a little cafe one day. As for me, I started to think about my own future. I loved school and had always been curious about the world beyond our village. Maybe I could become a teacher, helping others learn and grow, just as my parents had helped us. But dreams, we quickly realized, required more than just hope. They needed hard work, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. Sam threw himself into his studies. Like never before, he started spending hours at the village library, reading every book he could find about plants, water, and the environment. He even set up a small lab in the corner of our yard, a wooden table covered with jars, soil samples, and notebooks filled with messy sketches and scribbled notes. One day, he came running into the house, clutching a tiny sapling. "Look, Mom," he exclaimed. "I found this near the creek. It's different from the other plants around here. I think it grows faster because of the soil there." Mom smiled, her hands covered in flour from kneading dough. "That's wonderful, Sam. Keep studying it. Who knows, you might discover something important." His determination inspired all of us. Even little Anna got involved, helping Sam water his plants and take notes. "I'm the assistant scientist," she declared proudly, holding a notebook almost as big as her. Meanwhile, Mom's baking business was growing. Thanks to her creativity and hard work, she began experimenting with new recipes, incorporating flavors from the herbs and berries we grew at home. People in the village loved her treats, and soon she had regular customers lining up at her stall. But it wasn't without challenges. One morning, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her face lined with worry. "What's wrong, Mom?" I asked, sitting beside her. She sighed. "I've been thinking about how to expand the business. If I could buy an oven, I could bake more at once. But we don't have enough money for that right now." I thought for a moment, what if we saved a little every week? Even a small amount could add up over time. She smiled, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "You're right, one step at a time. Just like we've always done." From that day on, we all chipped in. Dad set aside a portion of his earnings. Sam saved his small allowance. And I even started tutoring younger kids in the village to earn a little extra. Slowly but surely, the savings grew. Dad, too, was chasing his dream. His workshop had always been small, but his craftsmanship was unmatched. People came from nearby villages to buy his furniture, admiring the care and precision he put into every piece. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, he shared his vision. "I want to create something that lasts," he said, "furniture that tells a story, that people pass down through generations." We all nodded, excited by his ambition. Sam suggested he carve unique designs into his pieces, inspired by nature. Like the patterns on tree bark or the ripples in water, he explained. Dad loved the idea. He started incorporating those designs into his work, and soon his pieces became even more sought after. It was incredible to see his dream taking shape, one beautiful piece at a time. As for me, I started focusing on school like never before. I knew that, if I wanted to become a teacher, I needed to excel in my studies. But there were times when doubt crept in. Could someone from a small village like ours really achieve such a big dream? One day, our teacher, Mrs. Harris, pulled me aside after class. "You've been doing exceptionally well," she said with a smile. "Have you thought about what you want to do after school?" "I want to be a teacher," I admitted, my voice trembling slightly. Her smile grew wider. "You'd make a wonderful teacher. You're kind, patient, and eager to learn. Don't let anything hold you back. Remember, great journeys start with small steps." Her words filled me with new determination. That night, I shared my dream with my family. "You'll be the best teacher," Sam declared, his face lighting up. "And we'll be your students," Anna added with a giggle. Their encouragement meant the world to me. As the months passed, our family worked tirelessly toward our individual dreams. But what made it special was how we supported one another. When Sam struggled with his experiments, Dad would share advice from his years of working with wood and tools. When Mom needed help baking, Anna and I were always there, rolling dough or packing loaves. And when I felt overwhelmed by schoolwork, my family's unwavering belief in me kept me going. One evening, as we sat around the fire, Sam looked up at the stars and said, "Do you think our dreams will come true?" "They will," Dad replied, his voice steady. "Because dreams don't just happen. They're built piece by piece, day by day, and with a family like ours, there's nothing we can't build." His words stayed with me. Our dreams were big, but our determination was even bigger. We didn't know what the future held, but we were ready to face it together, with hearts full of hope and hands ready to work. Chapter 4. The Power of Love and Support. Dreams, as we quickly learned, don't come without challenges. The road to achieving them was far from smooth, but it was our love and support for one another that kept us moving forward. Each of us had moments when we stumbled, but in those moments, our family stood as a safety net, catching and lifting us up. Sam's little lab in the yard had grown over the months, with new jars, tools, and plants scattered across the table. He'd been working on a project to test how different soils affected plant growth. His goal was to develop a way to help crops survive in tough conditions, like the drought we'd faced. One day, after weeks of careful work, he excitedly showed us his results. "Look at this," he said, holding up a plant that had grown taller and greener than the others. "This soil mixture works. I think it could really help farmers." We were all thrilled for him, but just a few days later, disaster struck. A sudden storm rolled through the village, and the strong winds toppled Sam's lab table. When we ran outside, we found his jars shattered and his plants scattered across the yard. Sam stood there, staring at the wreckage. His shoulders slumped. "It's all ruined," he whispered, his voice shaking. Mom knelt beside him, placing a hand on his back. "It's not ruined, Sam," she said gently. "It's just a setback. You can rebuild this." "But I worked so hard," he said, tears brimming in his eyes. "And that hard work isn't gone." Dad said, stepping forward, "You've learned so much. Now you just need to start again. And this time, you'll be even better." We all pitched in to help Sam rebuild his lab. Anna carefully swept up the broken glass, while Mom and I helped replant the surviving saplings. Dad crafted a sturdier table for him, one that wouldn't topple so easily. Seeing our family rally around him lifted Sam's spirits. And soon he was back to work, more determined than ever. Mom's dream of owning a cafe was slowly taking shape. With the money we'd saved, she finally bought a second-hand oven. It was old and a little rusty, but to Mom, it was a treasure. She started baking more than ever, experimenting with recipes and taking orders from people in the village. Every time someone complimented her food, her eyes would light up with joy. But running a growing business wasn't easy. There were days when she'd stay up late, her hands aching from kneading dough, and mornings when orders piled up faster than she could manage. One particularly busy day, Mom looked overwhelmed, her apron streaked with flour and her hair falling out of its bun. I stepped into the kitchen and said, "Let me help." At first she hesitated. "You've got schoolwork." "Sweetheart, I don't want to burden you." "It's not a burden, Mom," I said firmly. "We're a team, remember." She smiled, and together we tackled the mountain of orders. By the end of the day, we were both exhausted but proud. "Thank you," she said, giving me a tight hug. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Of course you could have," I replied. "But you don't have to do it alone." Dad's furniture business was thriving, but with more orders came more work. He often stayed late at the workshop, sanding, carving, and assembling pieces by hand. One evening, as we all sat around the dinner table, he rubbed his temples and sighed. "I think I need help," he admitted. "You should hire someone," Mom suggested. "I've thought about it," he said, "but we don't have the money to pay an apprentice right now." Sam, ever the problem solver, piped up. "Why not teach me? I can help after school." Dad looked at him, a mixture of surprise and pride on his face. "Are you sure it's hard work?" "I'm sure," Sam said. "I want to learn." From that day on, Sam became Dad's apprentice. He learned how to measure, cut, and assemble wood, and even added his own creative touches to the designs. Working together not only eased Dad's workload, but also deepened their bond. While my family was making progress toward their dreams, I was struggling in my own way, balancing school, helping Mom, And preparing for exams was harder than I'd imagined. There were days when I felt like I wasn't good enough, like my dream of becoming a teacher was slipping out of reach. One evening, as I sat at the kitchen table with my head in my hands, Dad walked in. He sat down beside me and said, "What's on your mind, kiddo?" I feel like I'm failing. I admitted, there's so much to do, and I'm not sure I can handle it. He placed a hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than you think," he said, "and you don't have to do it all alone. We're here for you always." His words gave me the strength to keep going. I started setting smaller goals for myself, tackling one thing at a time instead of trying to do everything at once. And every time I accomplished something, no matter how small, my family celebrated with me. Through all the challenges, one thing became clear. Our family's love and support were our greatest strengths. We weren't just chasing our own dreams. We were helping each other reach them. When Sam rebuilt his lab, it wasn't just his victory. It was all of ours. When Mom baked her first batch of bread in her new oven, we celebrated as a family. When Dad completed a big furniture order, we all cheered. And when I finally aced my exams, my family's pride made all the hard work worthwhile. Love wasn't just a feeling, it was an action. It was in the way we encouraged one another, lifted each other up, and never gave up, no matter how tough things got. One evening, as we sat around the fire, Anna, who had been quietly listening to us talk about our dreams, said, "You know what I want to be." "What's that, sweetheart?" Mom asked. "I want to be just like all of you," she said with a big smile, "because you're all my heroes." Her words brought tears to our eyes. In that moment, we realized that our journey wasn't just about achieving our dreams. It was about inspiring one another, creating memories, and building a legacy of love. Chapter 5. The fruits of our labor. The years of hard work and unwavering determination finally began to bear fruit. It wasn't sudden or dramatic, but rather a series of small victories that accumulated over time, each one a reminder of how far we had come. Sam's passion for science had only grown stronger. His lab, now a sturdier structure thanks to Dad's craftsmanship, was filled with rows of plants, thriving in the soil mixtures he'd created. His experiments were meticulous, and his notebooks were filled with detailed observations. One day, Sam came running into the house, his face glowing with excitement. "Mom, Dad, I think I've done it," he exclaimed. He held up a small potted plant with thick green leaves. "This plant grew twice as fast as the others using my new soil mixture," he explained. "I think it could really help farmers, especially during tough times." Mom beamed with pride, and Dad clapped Sam on the back. "That's incredible, son," he said. Word of Sam's work spread through the village, and soon, local farmers were asking him for advice. He even gave a small talk at the village square, sharing his findings with anyone who wanted to learn. Watching him stand there, confidently explaining his work, filled us all with pride. "Your dream is coming true, Sam," I told him that evening. "Thanks to all of you," he said with a smile. Mom's baking business had grown steadily, and her dream of owning a cafe was finally within reach. With the money we'd saved, along with a small loan from a kind neighbor, she rented a modest space in the village. Together, we transformed it into a cozy cafe with wooden tables, floral curtains, and a display counter filled with her delicious treats. On opening day, the cafe was packed. Villagers came not only to enjoy Mom's food, but also to celebrate her success. The cafe became more than just a place to eat. It was a gathering spot where people shared stories, laughed, and created memories. Watching Mom work behind the counter, her face glowing with happiness, was one of the most heartwarming sights I'd ever seen. "I couldn't have done this without all of you," she said one evening as we cleaned up after closing. "You inspire us, Mom," I said, giving her a hug. "We're so proud of you." Dad's furniture business had also flourished. His unique designs, inspired by nature, became his signature, and people from neighboring villages came to buy his work. One day, a man from the city visited our village. He was a furniture store owner, looking for talented craftsmen to feature in his shop. When he saw Dad's work, he was immediately impressed. "These pieces are extraordinary," he said, running his hand over the smooth wood. "I'd like to place an order for my store." Dad was hesitant at first. The order was large, and he wasn't sure he could handle it alone. But Sam and I volunteered to help, and together, we completed the order on time. When the furniture was displayed in the city store, it received rave reviews. Dad's name spread far and wide, and his dream of creating a lasting legacy became a reality. "I never imagined this would happen," he admitted one evening as we sat on the porch. "You earned it, Dad," I said, "through your hard work and dedication." As for me, my dream of becoming a teacher was finally within reach. After graduating at the top of my class, I received a scholarship to attend a teacher's college in the city. It was a bittersweet moment, exciting, but also difficult to leave my family behind. "You'll do great things," Mom said as she helped me pack. "We'll miss you, but we know this is just the beginning of your journey," Dad added. When I arrived in the city, it was overwhelming at first. The buildings were tall, the streets were bustling, and everything felt so different from our little village. But I carried my family's love and support with me, and that gave me the courage to keep going. At college, I worked hard, just as my parents had taught me. I stayed in touch with my family, writing letters and calling whenever I could. Their updates about the cafe, the workshop, and Sam's experiments kept me grounded and motivated. Back at home, Anna was growing into a kind, confident young girl, inspired by our family's determination. She started exploring her own interests. She loved painting and often created beautiful landscapes that reflected the beauty of our village. "You're an artist, Anna," Mom said one day as she admired a painting of the creek. Anna beamed. "Maybe one day I can sell my paintings and help the family too." "You already do, sweetheart," Dad said. "Your joy brings us all together." Years later, after finishing my studies, I returned to the village to begin teaching at the local school. Walking into our home, I was overwhelmed by how much had changed, yet stayed the same. Mom's cafe was thriving, Dad's workshop was busier than ever, and Sam's work was making a real difference for farmers in the village. Even Anna had her own little art corner at the cafe, where she displayed her paintings. As we sat around the dinner table that evening, I looked at my family, my heart full of gratitude. "We've come so far," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "And we'll keep going," Dad replied. "Because no matter what, we'll always have each other." We raised our glasses, toasting to our dreams, our struggles, and the love that had carried us through it all. In that moment, I realized that success wasn't just about achieving goals. It was about the journey, the lessons learned, and the bonds strengthened along the way. Our family had weathered storms, overcome challenges, and built a life filled with love, resilience, and hope. And I knew, deep in my heart, that together, there was nothing we couldn't achieve.